Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ryan Tackberry. I'm here with the Genesee District Library. I'm the Digital Services Librarian, and we're here to talk to you about what some of our librarians have been reading and what books they would recommend to you. And we'd like to hear what books you have been reading as well. So if you are watching this live, please feel free to leave a comment. Let us know what you've been enjoying and what you'd like to see us talk about potentially in the future too. All of our books we're going to talk about today, you can find at our website, which is thegdl.org, and you can find them at What Are You Reading? thegdl.org/What Are You Reading? If you enjoy this virtual program, you can see other upcoming programs there as well at thegdl.org/events has our calendar of events of all of our upcoming programs. And also if you stop in one of our branches, or you can also download this on our website, we have the 19, which has all of our upcoming programs for the spring in physical form. So take a look at that. We have lots of cool things coming up, and we hope that you'll enjoy. All right, with all that being said, we can kind of dive right in to what we're talking about this month. I think we have 9 book recommendations to get through. And Sherry, would you like to be our starting person this month?
Sure. Are we starting with our theme books?
Yeah, so we'll talk about our theme is what we've read books that have made up of 5 letters, a Wordle theme. Everyone who's still enjoying you playing Wordle out there. What I would encourage everyone at home, if you're watching this, take the book you find to be the most interesting that we talk about, and use that as your starting word for the week. That's what I would encourage you to do. If you do that, and if you get the Wordle answer correctly, then let us know. Post on Facebook and show us a picture. All right, so Sherry, what is your Wordle book? What is your word you're recommending people start with this week?
All right. So I'm recommending the Lying Club, and I know it's 2 words, but lying has 5, so that's what I'm going with. The Lying Club by Annie Ward. It's a mystery slash thriller. Um, it takes place in an elite Colorado private school. It follows 3 women. Natalie is the office assistant at the Colorado private school. It's that kind of school that just like oozes privilege. So it opens with Natalie discovering a body in the school gym. We don't find out who it is or if that person's even dead until later in the book. So then it goes on to follow not only Natalie, so it goes back in time to kind of explain what led up to the dead body, but Brooke, who's a wealthy heiress, and Asha, who's a realtor with a faltering marriage, but she also has a baby on the way. Both Brooke and Asha have girls on the Falcon Academy soccer team. So that's where we get our next player is the coach of the soccer team, Nick. He's also the boyfriend of Natalie. He's charming, he's smart, and all the ladies in town seem to be quite taken with him. So it's kind of a toss-up as to who ends up dead, and you have to read pretty far into it to find out. So this one's twisted. It's twisted in the way all good thrillers are twisted. You might be able to guess a few of the twists, but the ending I never saw coming. It kind of gives off Hunting Wives by May Cobb that I think Nancy talked about before, and then Big Little Lies vibes. So if you like those 2, you'll probably like this one.
I think bodies might be a theme throughout the books we're talking about as well, and heirs and heiresses maybe. Also, the Lion Club's great. That's if you had an S on the end of club, that's 2 5-letter words you can use
There you
to
go.
guess in Wordle. Um, who would you recommend this book for, Sherry? What kind of things just kind of stood out to you that hey, if
As
you
long
like
as
these,
you like unreliable narrators and characters that aren't always the most likable, which is not usually my thing in most books, but I don't mind it in a thriller. So it's good for people who like Big Little Lies or maybe The Girl on the Train. Maybe even people who liked Gone Girl and are looking for like a twisted kind of thriller. This one definitely is that.
I like twisted thriller as a genre name. All right, thanks, Sherry. Let's move over to Chris. What do you want to talk about? What is your Wordle book first?
So my Wordle book is The Heirs by Susan Reiger, I guess is how you say her name. So it's kind of a cheater word because I haven't found Wordle to use too many 4-letter words that are plural with the S. So I don't know if I would recommend it necessarily as your first try, but if you got it right, you'd get the S. If you got some of the letters right, it's got a fair share.
Two vowels.
Yeah,
That's
2
good.
vowels and an S. So, it's a good chance. So this is the story of 5 brothers who grow up in a wealthy household in Manhattan. The story totally revolves around their father dying and what the fallout of that looks like. Actually not shortly, a couple of years after he passes, a woman comes out of the woodwork and claims that she knew him and had 2 sons by him. And the sons are similar in age to these 5 brothers. The brothers then, the story's told in alternating chapters from different brother viewpoints, even though we don't really get to know 2 of the brothers. They wonder if they really knew their parents at all because their mother remains very stoic and uncommitted about this whole ordeal. So here's these 2 other sons potentially out in the world that weren't hers, and she just acts really cold and aloof about it. This actually was my second attempt at reading this book. I tried to read it, I don't know, maybe about 5 years ago. I didn't like it back then. So this time around, I just kind of mustered through it for the sake of Wordle. I'd say it's a book that can be used as a character study because it really didn't have a plot. It really didn't have any action. And if you can accept the kind of flimsy mystery about whether these sons were really his sons, it'd make an interesting conversation for a book club because of all the different kind of topics and the idea of whether the parents were, the father was, not true to his wife and that kind of thing. So I think, if you have a book club that likes character-driven stories, this is probably the story for your group.
What made you decide to come back to this now? Was it just the Wordle name? The 5 letters, or I guess what made you think, oh, maybe it's worth trying again?
I think because I'm not really sure. I was looking through my TBR list and I was looking for a Wordle thing, and I thought, maybe sometime I've had good luck with going back to things that I didn't like before. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just give it another try and see if I liked it better this time around.
Are you glad you read it, or would you? What was it worth coming back to, do you think?
Yeah, I think it was worth coming back to. Yeah, definitely. Because I enjoyed the kind of the differences in the characters and how they dealt with this knowledge about their dad. So one brother responded a certain way and the other brother was, trying to make heads or tails of it. And the other brother was trying to support the mom. And so it was interesting like that.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And Kristen, what is your Wordle book for April?
All right. So my Wordle book for April was Honor by Thridi Amrigar. And this book is about an Indian American journalist. Her name is Smita, and she has returned to India to cover a story. And the story is about a woman named Meena, who is a Hindu woman, who has been attacked by members of her own village, specifically her own family, for marrying a Muslim man. And Smita has to go report this story, and it takes place in the violence takes place in a village in India, and she has to kind of come face to face with like this idea of like tradition and how that kind of carries more weight than like what it like than love, especially because like in Mina's case, her life and her whole life was kind of destroyed because of who she loved. And so Smita meets Mohan, and they go to this village to report this story, and Mina's fate kind of hangs in the balance because she is suing her family for what happened to her husband. And there's kind of like a dual love story going on, which is like Mina and her husband, and then also Smita and Mohan. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on in this story. But it's a really, really good story. And it's kind of one of those books you can't really put down because you really want to know what happens next. But it's a very tough story to get through because of everything that happens in it, especially in regards to what happens with Mina and her husband and her family. And it's apparently 3D Amrigar, she actually wrote this, like it's based on like not a specifically true story, but like kind of like incidents that happened in India. So it's based on like things that can happen or have happened in like real life. So it's hard to read this and at times, but I do recommend it because I think it's such a good story. I will say, like, at the end, it kind of gets wrapped up in like a nice little bow, which I don't think is kind of how real life really is. But I think if you can kind of like look past the ending, I think you will really like this book. And I think, and the way I kind of got into this book was because I had picked up a couple different books with 5-letter words, and I didn't like any of the ones I picked up. And so I just kind of walked through my branch and looked at books that had 5-letter titles. And I picked up this one, I picked up a couple others, and then just kind of settled on this one. And the minute I picked it up, I was hooked. So yeah, I think if you like a really good story, and I think you would like this book. It's got some interesting surprises in it too. So
I like that you mentioned like how you decided on how you found it, looking for this criteria we've set out for ourselves. Because that's last month when I read the collection of short stories. That's kind of what I did. I just looked and I found this book, and I really liked it, and I never would have read it otherwise.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. Have you read any of the author's other books?
I haven't.
One, right?
Yeah, this is her newest one. I do own one of her books, but I don't have it. I mean, I haven't read it yet. So I think it's going to kind of push it up further. After reading this one, it's going to push it up further in my to-read pile, just because I just really I can't say enjoy because the topic of the book is really difficult, but I liked her writing style. So I think that I will definitely move it up further because I am interested to read more by this writer.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
All right, let's go back to Sherry. What is your first of your non-Wordle books? They can have as many letters as you want in them.
All right, and I'm going to. There's a lot of letters in this title. The Shop on Royal Street by Karen White. My next two books aren't my typical books. This one has like a supernatural aspect, which is not typical for me. I should mention first, this is a spin-off series to the author's Trad Street books, and which I haven't read those, but I didn't feel like I was missing a lot. I mean, you could probably go and backtrack to them if you want the whole backstory of the family, but she puts enough little kind of nuggets in there that you don't feel really like you're missing anything. So it takes place in New Orleans, which is one of my favorite places, which is why I decided to pick the book up. So Nola Trenholm has finally put her life back together, and she's ready to buy her first home in New Orleans. Her stepmother, Melanie, who is really who the previous series is about, I think, is skeptical, both because the house is a mess, but because Melanie can sense spirits in the house with unfinished business. Nola doesn't care. She's undeterred, even when Bo Ryan, who she has a rocky past with, turns out to be the seller of the home. And then she finds out it's a murder house. So obviously a murder has been committed there, hence the spirits that won't leave. So she sets out to make the house a home along with a crazy cast of characters. There is a contractor who pretends he's deaf because he speaks Portuguese and everyone assumes he speaks Spanish and he can't correct them, so he just pretends like he's deaf. There is a construction worker who has been in prison, but because of the spirits, they can't get very many people to work on it. So, and he turns out to be like a master juggler. And then Jolene turns out to be Nola's roommate in her apartment while she's getting the house ready. And she's like the quintessential Southern belle, full of amazing stories, unusual sayings, and she'll put a monogram on just about anything. I felt like Nola was a quirky personality, but in her quest to be so extremely self-sufficient, she made me want to shake her a couple times. She makes some really bad decisions in that quest to be independent. But it wasn't so awful that I didn't enjoy the story. There were just a few times where I wanted to like shake her. The New Orleans setting is like perfect. The author clearly did her homework. I do things where I like Google different places if they appear in books, and all of the places she mentioned seem to be real. It felt like you were there. Like I said, it's not my typical read, but I kept turning the pages past my bedtime, and I'm looking forward to the next book in the series.
I know that you've been to New Orleans. Did you recognize anything in the book at any place that you've been?
There were a few places that I recognized. Yeah. And there were some places I didn't know anything about, but when I looked them up, they were like real places. So she definitely did her homework, because I don't think she's from there. I believe she's from Charleston, where the first series was set.
Okay. Well, so like you said, it's not a typical read because of the supernatural sort of element. Do you enjoy reading books that occasionally that are kind of outside of your typical reading area?
I hope to step outside. I mean, there have been a few times, like there have been a few horror books, which I'm also not a horror fan, that I have enjoyed. So yeah, every once in a while I like to step outside and try something different. And sometimes it's good, and then sometimes it's like a disaster.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. All right, Chris, what is your next book?
My next book is the newest book by Rebecca Searle, and it's One Italian Summer. This is the story of Katie, whose mother has recently died. And prior to her death, Katie and her mother were planning this trip to Italy. So they were planning to travel together, and then the mom died. So Katie kind of has this come to Jesus moment where she's like totally questioning her whole life, whether she wants to be married to her husband, what role her mother played in her life, does she really want to keep her career? So she decides to make the trip to Italy alone. And she leaves her husband at home because she's not even sure she wants to be married to him anymore. So once she arrives on the Amalfi Coast, she's getting acclimated to the area, staying in the hotel that her and her mother were supposed to stay at. And she spots her mother in the street. So she takes it upon herself to get to know this woman, and they start hanging out. And this allows Katie to get to know herself better and to get to know her mother back in this kind of like, it's this weird kind of like time travel, because the mom is like 30 years younger. So that would have put her like back in 1992. So they're traveling together, and they're visiting these different sites and seeing these places and eating at great restaurants. I kept waiting for the hook in this story. It never materialized. So the story itself was just kind of meh for me. I really loved the beautiful imagery she gave about Italy and the coast. It felt like a travel log as you were reading it, telling you where to go and where to great food and, how great the sun is and what to wear. And so, the book is just under 300 pages. So it's not that hard of a book to read or anything. In fact, it's fairly easy. And I would totally recommend it if you're planning to travel to Italy or you like destination type stories, because it reads like a travelogue.
I was gonna say this could be like the travel edition of What Are You Reading too.
Yeah.
And maybe you could say, like, if Katie's mom died, do you have any money left to her? Because then she'd be an heiress as well, and that kind of connects to the other.
Right. That would have been cool. But no, that didn't happen. And I should mention that I was really looking forward to this book because Rebecca Searle wrote In 5 Years. And that book just like spoke to my soul. So that's why I would think I was disappointed that it didn't have that kind of hook that the first book had. Her first book had. So.
All right. Okay, Kristen, what is your next book you'd like to talk about?
Okay, so my book is The Body in Question by Jill Cement. And this book is not at all similar to any of the books that we have previously talked about. So this book takes place in Florida, and we are taken to a jury trial, and we are introduced to juror C2. We don't get her name until actually the very end of the book, and we just know her as C2, and she's a married 52-year-old former photographer, and she is involved in this major jury trial. It's like a big jury trial because there's like all of these reporters and like all these people that are kind of surrounding them, and they get sequestered to a Econo Lodge, very fancy, in Florida, and she meets juror F17, and again, we don't know any of the names of these people. We only know them by either number or the nicknames that juror C2 comes up with them. So we know like Church Lady, and there's like other nicknames of all these people that she says, because I don't, at the time she doesn't even know their names because it's part of a jury trial. And so they get all of these details because it's also a murder trial, and it's this rich white teenage girl who's on trial for murdering her toddler brother. And they get all of these really shocking and like horrible details of the crime that are revealed during the days and the hours of the courtroom while they're in the courtroom. And then when they're done with the court for the day, they go they're treated to like meals at like Outback Steakhouse and Red Lobster. And it's really funny because it's like, is this like a book that's like, I mean, is this person getting advertised? Like, I don't know, because there's like such like names in these books, like of like real like places. It's just kind of funny to me. This book is also like kind of humorous in a way, but like in a kind of a dark way. And then while this is happening, jurors C2 and F17 decide that they don't want to go to the restaurant, and so they stay behind. And meanwhile, they kind of get together. And if you know anything about like being on a jury, you're kind of not supposed to do that, because you're not really supposed to even talk to each other about the trial or anything, because it goes against like being a juror. And so they actually become lovers, and then during that they realize that they actually kind of take opposing sides of the case. And so this whole book is just kind of about like them as the relationship progresses, but also like the case. And then also like you're getting this inside look of like how juror C2, like how she feels about her life. And she also has a husband who is like much older than her, like 30 years older than her. So you get that kind of look as well. It's like It's such a interesting book. I've never read anything like this before, but I really enjoy. Like, I really liked it, and it's kind of been on my radar for a while. And then I've been following. Like, I really like watching book talk or book information on TikTok, and I this book has been discussed a lot, like from some of my favorite book talks that I like to follow. And so finally I was like, all right, I'm going to read this. And so good. I really liked it. But it's a little weird, and but yeah, I recommend it. I super liked it. It's kind of like funny, but like in a dark way. And then also you're just kind of like, what is happening?
It sounds like a really interesting and unique kind of story.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking about now, though, is like a scary thought that I never had of that, like, is there product placement in books? And like, that's
Yeah.
it's a new fear I have that I never thought about before.
Yeah, because like I said, there's like Outback Steakhouse is mentioned, Red Lobster is mentioned, Econo Lodge. I think there's like some other, there's something else that was mentioned too, and I'm just like, whoa. But also I haven't read any other books. Again, another author that I'm like now like really interested in, but I almost wonder if like that's her thing, because she tends to write like really kind of odd books, like from what I've been researching about her. So maybe it's just her style. Like maybe she just likes to throw in some interesting tidbits. So I don't know.
Right. That's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Sherry. Oh, go ahead.
I do have a question about that, though. Do you think going forward that will date the book, or do you think it will help the story like hold its own over time?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I think it could be both, because depending on how, like, I guess like if you think of books that have old restaurants in them that don't exist anymore, it could date it, but it could also be like, oh, hey, remember that when we used to go there? So
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be both, definitely. Could be like nostalgic.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I do remember reading a book once that was set in the 80s, and I'm reading it along, and all of a sudden the author mentions like a type of, I think it was a perfume. And I was like, oh, I had completely forgotten about that perfume that was available in the 80s, because, they don't make it anymore. So it totally had that nostalgia type of feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could definitely be both, because I think like if I read something that, took place in my childhood, it could be nostalgic, but then it could also be like, well, why is she discussing this? Like, how is it relevant to the book? So yeah, it could do both.
Thank you.
All right, Sherry, what is your third book for today?
My third book is The Oxford Brotherhood by Guillermo Martinez. It's a translated book. And again, because that's just been my theme today, it is the second in a series, but again, I didn't feel like I missed anything. And the previous book is like from 2005, so there was a big gap between the two books. I don't know if in Argentina, where he's from, he's had more books between those two time periods, but I didn't really feel like I was missing anything. The story pretty much stood on its own. This is also not my typical read, but the setting in Oxford and the subject matter intrigued me enough, so I was like, I'll pick it up, and I wasn't sorry. It was good. There were a few bits that were confusing to me, but mostly it was good. So basically, G, they never give his full name. They mention a few times that it's difficult to pronounce. I don't know if it's actually Guillermo like the author, but G, who's a mathematics student from Argentina, he's trying to focus on his studies when he's drawn into investigating a series of crimes. His mentor, who's a member of the Lewis Carroll Brotherhood, has a mystery to solve. The Brotherhood had hired a student researcher, Kristen, and while searching through the archives, she'd found some pages that had been previously torn out of Lewis Carroll's diaries. They believe his relatives did that to protect his legacy. She's the first one who's come across them. She claims the information will change the way the world sees him, but she's reluctant to share the pages because she wants the credit for finding the information. And the Lewis Carroll Brotherhood is made up of a bunch of Oxford professors mostly. So she's afraid that they'll take credit for her actual work. But then Kristen is hit by a car. They think it's a little suspicious, but not enough to really do anything about until the publisher who is going to publish this information ends up dead. Both crimes, as it turns out, end up having mysterious photos that were supposedly taken by Lewis Carroll turn up at both the crime scenes. And then pictures get sent to all the members of the Brotherhood, so they all kind of think that they might be next. I liked the literary aspect of this. I learned a lot about Lewis Carroll throughout this, and I had to go and look up a few things that they mentioned because I have not done a deep study into Lewis Carroll. I really liked the setting at Oxford. Again, the setting was what made it for me. Before the pandemic started, Oxford was one of the places I had traveled to, and it's one of my favorite places. So it was nice being able to like revisit the places in the book. It's a mystery, which I typically read. I just don't typically read ones that have such a literary aspect to it, but it was very interesting and I felt like I learned a lot.
That kind of ties into what we're just talking about too, of, you know, books that are about in a certain time period. That brings that up, and it's, you know, a book that a place that you've been to that kind of brings back those memories.
Mm-hmm.
My question for you is, do you find it any easy to kind of jump into the middle of a series or like the second book in a series? I'm someone who like I have to like read the whole thing or I can't start it.
It depends on the series. I mean, as you guys know, I read a lot of romance, and a lot of them they say, oh, this is a series, but they're also a standalone. While you're reading it, you kind of get drawn into, oh, hey, these characters, I don't know their story. And so you end up going back. It doesn't really take away. And there are certain series I don't think you can jump into the middle of without being confused. But this one, I think, because there was such a gap between the first one and the second one, and it was a completely different subject matter, it was a little easier, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. Thank you, Sherry. Chris, what is your last book today?
My third selection today is a teen fiction title by Sarah Dessen called Along for the Ride. This story takes place in the summertime in a coastal town. Auden is the daughter of academic parents, and she has always strived to get their acceptance. So throughout her childhood, she kind of forego doing any things that normal children would do, like learn how to ride a bike, play in the sandbox, go to the movies with friends, actually have friends. So this story is about her. Actually, her parents are divorced. So she leaves her mom to go live in the coastal town with her father and his new wife and their brand new baby. She's a recent high school graduate, and because she hasn't experienced much fun, she thought she would go live with her dad and see what living in a coastal town would be like before she heads off to her Ivy League college in the fall. So this is kind of a coming of age story as she discovers how to have fun, how to make friends, and how to be a young person. I enjoyed it. It was kind of a light and easy read. I picked it up because it's going to be released as a Netflix movie on May 6th. So I thought I would read it before the movie came out. It's April 19th. Anybody who wants to read it before that May 6th date, you can get it in print from GDL or you can get it on Libby. So I would recommend checking it out and reading it before the movie comes out.
And if you need help getting a copy of it, leave a comment here and we can help you order it online or help you with Libby as well, however you want to read it. Cool. That's a neat topical book. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I should also mention too that a couple of my coworkers absolutely love Sarah Dessen, and this was the very first Sarah Dessen that I read. So
would you read more?
Yeah, I think I will read more when I'm kind of on an in between between some of my book club books. This will be a nice kind of change of pace.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And Kristen, you get to conclude things for us. What is your last book here?
All right. So my last book is The Appeal by Janice Hallett. And this book is I'm going to try and say this right, an epistolary novel. And an epistolary novel refers to the works of fiction that are written in the form of letters or other documents. So this book is all emails and text messages and other types of memos. So there's no there's paragraphs and stuff in it, but you're not getting any type of text or a full text document type thing. So this book takes place in England, I'm pretty sure. There's nothing that really outright says it. And we're introduced to a group of people who are part of the Fairway Players, which is a local theater group that is led by the director, Martin Hayward, and his wife, Helen. And when they're in the midst of rehearsals for this, for one of their upcoming plays, their young granddaughter is diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. And so they make an appeal. So in this case, the appeal is not like when you think of a court, in terms of law appeal, it's in the terms of we're making an appeal for, to have to raise money to get, to help with paying for this, to help pay for the treatment to treat this cancer. So because the cancer is so rare, they have to use this experimental treatment, and it costs a lot of money. But not everybody in this group is convinced that the experimental treatment is for the best, and they're not really sure of the good intentions of everybody involved. So as all of this tension grows within this community, things kind of come to a big explosive reveal at the dress rehearsal. And the next day, one of the members of the community theater group is found dead. And after that, an arrest is made, and the run up to the trial, two young lawyers are kind of going through all of these emails and all of these messages and texts and letters and all of that stuff to see kind of what is going on really. And so that's kind of where you're introduced. But at the beginning is you find out kind of okay, so these two lawyers are going through all this information, and then that's kind of where all of these emails and stuff come in, and that's where you find out all of this stuff is going on. So it sounds confusing, but once you start reading it, it's really interesting. And I have to say, because of the style of the book, I just read it through so quickly. And it was so interesting. I don't think I've ever read a book like this, and told in this style. And I really liked it. And I kind of want to find more books like this, because I don't know, I just really like the style of it. And I think that it was told in such a cool way, and with the the style, I don't know, I just really, really liked it. I just finished this book on Sunday, so it's still fresh in my mind, and I've been having a hard time picking up another book since then, because I just can't I don't know, I just really loved it. I will say though, I think this book could have wrapped up probably 50 to 100 pages sooner than what it did. But if you keep pressing through, it's still really good. So if you're okay with kind of getting through that initial style, that different style change, I think overall, it's a really good story and it's really interesting. And for somebody who can kind of guess like kind of what's going on, it did take me a while to figure it out. So
I had never heard the term epistolary novels. Did I say it right?
yeah,
Or-
epistolary, yeah.
But I've always liked this type of book. I feel like the first one most people probably read, at least that I remember reading as a kid, was Dear Mr. Henshaw by Beverly Cleary.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I've mentioned it on here before, I think. One that I am really enjoying, because I started reading it months ago and I have it still checked out, halfway read, is Attachments by
Yes.
Rainbow Rowell, and which is so good. And I will eventually finish it maybe one day. I really liked it. I just start 500,000 books and never finish them, which is why I never feel like talking about them here, because then I don't feel good talking about it unless I've mostly read it. So one day when I finish it, I will give my full review here in a future episode. But
I have read that and I forgot that it was in that style, but yeah, I did like that, the way that it was written in that way. So yeah.
All right. So those are all the books that we were talking about today. And again, if you want a list of them, you can find them at thegdl.org/whatareyourreading. And we'll be back here next month with a different theme besides Wordle, which I think we're still working out, but we'll let you know what that is. So thank you, everybody, for watching at home. Any comments from anyone here with us that you want to say before we go?
No.
All
No.
right. Cool. Well, have a nice Tuesday, everyone, and we will see you soon. Take care.
See you next month.
Bye.